Here is Kanda. Introduced his speech. Human history is layered with myriad undercurrents of different movements, causes, and perspectives on life, many of which we may very well not be aware of. Today, Kanda will illuminate for you a vital thread in human history, a component of life that if we did not have, we may very well still be living in the Stone Age. How beer saved the world. Kanda Alaha. How beer saved the world.
Did I hear you right? Did you say beer saved the world?
Yes, sir.
How can that be? I know there are people in this room who don't particularly care for this stuff. Well, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests, let me elucidate. I'll start with ancient times, prehistory, ancient times, go to the Middle Ages, founding of our nation, and modern times, to show how beer is entwined in the history of the world. We should go back to get a sense of the real fundamental part beer has played in human history. We should go back, way, way back, before the dawn of civilization, 11,000 years ago. Hunter-gatherers would gather berries, nuts, and grains and put them in clay pots. A favorite grain of theirs was wild barley. At one occasion, they may have left a pot of wild barley out, forgot about it, and it rained. 3 or 4 weeks later, they came back and saw this new concoction. They looked in there, the barley had sprouted, and unbeknownst to them, wild yeast had filtered out of the sky and landed in this wet mix and turned the sugars into alcohol. They took one sip, and voila, they have discovered beer, a gift of the gods. Now, in order to have a regular supply of barley, they couldn't be nomads anymore. They settled down and invented agriculture. What followed was a natural progression: bookkeeping, land surveying, written language. They all had to do this to keep records of the inventory of barley. Ancient Sumeria, 5,000 years ago, archaeologists have discovered tablets that the symbol for beer figured prominently in the bookkeeping. In ancient Egypt, in the translation of hieroglyphics, they discovered that the main source of food and nutrition was a low-alcohol beer that was drunk by all, early childhood to old age. The god of creation was also the god of beer. And the people who worked on the pyramids were paid in chips, the first form of money that were redeemable for 1 chip for 1 gallon of beer for 1 day worked. Now, scrolling forward to the Middle Ages, life was tough. It was difficult. You couldn't drink the water. It was dirty. It would make you sick. What can you do? Well, you brew beer. In the Middle Ages in Europe, the monasteries developed beer brewing to a high art and science. Instead of drinking water, man, woman, and child, early childhood to old age, would drink beer for nutrition and liquids. The average amount drunk was 80 gallons per person per year, from young to old. That's 6 times what is the average of an adult male in this country today. In the late Middle Ages, into the Renaissance and beyond, beer brewing extended beyond monasteries, was taken up by entrepreneurs in trade, commerce, finance, banking, and modern capitalism grew out as a result of that. Beer was also fundamental in the founding of our country. The Pilgrims on the Mayflower landed in Plymouth, cold Massachusetts, rather than their intended destination of Virginia, because they ran out of beer on board ship. That was really important when you're on the high seas to have that. When they ran out, they had to go to the nearest coast. They landed in Massachusetts and brewed some beer. When the American colonies pulled away from England, where did the radicals and founding fathers go to discuss their plans for the revolution? They didn't have telephones. They didn't have the internet, but they did have the tavern. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and especially, of course, Sam Adams were master brewers. Beer was an inspiration, fundamental inspiration for the founding of our nation. Ben Franklin said, beer is living proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy. Our national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, takes its melody from a popular beer drinking song of the time. If you could sing all the words right, you would be ready, you would be sober enough for another glass of beer. Into the modern times, beer remains an inspiration. Louis Pasteur invented pasteurization, not for keeping milk clean, not for milk, but for keeping beer from spoiling. The refrigeration was invented by beer brewers in this country around 1900 so that they could brew beer in the summer and keep it fresh throughout the year. The assembly line was not invented by Henry Ford, but by beer brewers who wanted to mass produce bottles so they could do the mass marketing of beer. Finally, the beer production was weaned off of mega breweries in this country in 1978, when President Jimmy Carter sealed his place in American history as a great president when he signed legislation to make the brewing of beer legal by one and all. Now we have 1,800 microbreweries in this country, and how many umpteen thousand home backyard brewers. Yes, indeed. Beer brewing has been fundamental to the advancement of human civilization. It is deservedly the #1 beverage on the planet. Beer has saved the world.
Is that your home brew?
That's water. I don't want to get in trouble.
Are you finished?